Welcome to the fourth video in our series wandering through books from the shelves behind me as we talk through methodology here, not simply content. Last week, we spent a lot of time with David Orr as we worked through how the readings each of us undertakes are fraught with inferences and logic we don't know that we know. We don't understand that they're part of how we do things, even if it's just a poem a few lines long. David Orr gave us a wonderful, specific version of how inference breaks apart readings of something seemingly simple. But we're not really here about a poem. The point here is to make our way through social spheres, through philosophical modern thought. Our job here is to learn and to do that, we need to spend time and understand what exactly builds the logic with which we read these things. David Orr points out how we read the poem with ourselves at the center. But why do we do that? Well, Frederick Jameson has a fantastic answer for that in his book, PostModernism, The Cultural Logic of Late-Stage Capitalism. You see, where we're at, this era, characterized by hyper-consumerism and the pervasive commodification of nearly all aspects of life, fundamentally reshapes our relationship as individuals with the world we live in. It fosters a profound egoization. Individuals are increasingly positioned as these sovereign consumers whose identity is curated through personal choices, the acquisition of experiences, rather than collective struggle or shared social roles. This extends to the commodification of the self, where even personal well-being, relationships, and self-actualization become products or services to be acquired for your individual fulfillment, like, say, reading a poem and self-inserting your own importance in the way you view the world directly into it, right? Easy. See, this inward turn is mirrored externally to us by things we digest socially. Jameson says that a few things exemplify this turn, but nothing does it better really than Pastiche, a fragmented array of styles and historical references, but devoid of critical distance, where the individual becomes an assembler of these superficial signs for their personal gratification aesthetically. Yeah. So for example, Dr. House, he's a guy who's addicted to Vicodin and solving puzzles. He lives at 221B, some fucking street, with a companion who's always with him, slightly kinder, named Wilson, and he treats a woman named Miss Adler in the pilot episode. None of these things themselves have depth or commentary, of course. They're simply elements referring to Sherlock Holmes, the addicted heroin guy who solves crimes living at 221 Baker Street who tarries with another Miss Adler. Member berries.
Member slimy?
Empty nothing references that get you to feel special by noticing them. Caesar's Palace does this by being Caesar's Palace. At Disney's Main Street, USA. These are great examples of the visual and architectural element. Films that I love. They're great, but they are pastiche in this way. Tarantino is basically guilty of this across the board. His entire filmography is pastiche. They're forms without critique. Jackie Brown is not mocking or sending up Foxy Brown. They're just doing the thing, and they're doing things that make you happy to see it done well. Yeah, it's tough. See, this leads to a pervasive depthlessness and a waning of affect, where profound historical and social dimensions pull back, they recede, and it leaves only this sort of immediate surface sensation. The consequence is a historical amnesia, where the past is reduced to decontextualized images for individual consumption. This isolates you, the ego, in this eternal present, detached from any enduring collective narrative or historical accountability. Thanks to this, It doesn't just mean that we get Marvel films loaded with a billion references to a billion things, but instead that every bit of content we digest is devoid of critique or commentary. See, when I talk to you about how people teach you riddles, that's the process I'm referring to. They're sharing with you signifying elements, signs, words, phrases, styles that in turn you can share with others mimetically. There's no systemic critique. It doesn't connect with desire. It's not even commentary. It's empty. It's commodity. It's a really difficult concept to get across. I've been trying to figure out how I would do this for a while. What I need is a video where, some simulacra of a philosopher type, a philosophy communicator would actually go after this and do it really wrong. Ideally with postmodernism and Frederick Jameson himself. Hey Michael, how you doing? Hope you're well. We've never actually talked, but you might remember me, as I was one of those
angry men in a room alone being like, philosophy tube doesn't understand fucking shit about Nietzsche.
And I'm not going to lie, it stung a bit to be called that by someone I actively watch, dismissed as a category of loser, a thing without even a response in kind. It's this fun thing you get to do due to the way that late-stage capitalism functions. You use a series of semiotic elements that have no content themselves, but are filled with little references, so those watching can fill them in how they want. It's really great. Speaking of references,
Frederick Jameson gives us a full-on Dr. House-style diagnosis of the cause of postmodernism.
My dude, calling Jameson's analysis a Dr. House-style diagnosis is a fundamental misunderstanding of, everything, but certainly historical materialism, and definitely Jameson and his book. See, Jameson isn't diagnosing postmodernism as a disease or malady that has a treatment or cure. You give a cure at the end even somehow. He's analyzing it as the necessary cultural expression of late capitalism's material base. This is not pathology, my dude. It is historical analysis. The medical metaphor, the way you're playing with signs, implies postmodernism is an aberration, something gone wrong that needs fixing. But Jameson writes explicitly, and his entire point is that postmodernism is capitalism functioning normally in its current phase. You cannot cure it any more than you can cure time or gravity or photosynthesis. As Jameson makes clear in The Political Unconscious, his method isn't therapeutic, but hermeneutic. It's about understanding how cultural forms express historical contradictions, not fixing them through some individualized self-help effort. And your confusion, my dude, runs through the whole video. You want Jameson to be offering solutions, so you find them. You want prescriptions, so you find them. You want treatments, so you find them. But Jameson is doing something far more radical. He's showing us that what we take as problems to be solved is actually the very structure of our historical moment. There's no solution. Capitalism functions through making solutions that are commodities of these things. And here's up front what I'll admit. It is possible you're doing an Andy Kaufman kind of style setup piece where the entire piece is actually the point when you take the whole alongside the parts. Because man, fuck.
One of the most dangerous aspects of postmodernism is that it's turned the news media into just another form of entertainment. One in which narratives can be constructed out of thin air with no connection to history or facts. Take the recent example of Donald Trump claiming,
"Did you have a sponsorship?" segment from Ground News is almost, too perfect. It's a crystalline example of postmodernism commodifying its own critique. So, you have a video here claiming to expose postmodern's depthlessness, literally being interrupted to sell a product that embodies depthlessness. Ground News doesn't help you understand ideological structures at all. It reduces them to consumer choices between prepackaged perspectives, left, right, or center. Pick your flavor. This is exactly what Jameson's critiquing and what he means by the waning of affect and the reduction of politics to this fucked up lifestyle branding. You're pitching an app promising to solve bias through more information. But that's the postmodern fantasy. The accumulation of data points would be understanding. It's not. Ground News takes all the information out there and adds more. That's their claim. But they don't do that. The extra information is actually something that reduces information. Jameson talks about this. It flattens the narrative within any article. You begin anything you read by flattening it as right or left by some degree or another. Somehow you actually end up with less information because the article isn't allowed outside of the categories that you conceptualize it within. Ground News's bias chart perfectly exemplifies what Jameson calls the cultural dominant. Everything is reduced to equivalent consumable positions in a marketplace of ideas. Despite there actually always being leftism in some right-wing shit and some rightism in revolutionary thought. Things have complexity and they exist in really weird ways. Ground News is just a step away from what might be the ultimate news reader app, and I just am terrified to even pitch it because it might come out, but maybe you just get the headline, color-coded left or right. Why fucking read articles at all? It's the structural logic of late capitalism. Every critique is a marketing opportunity. And that's a great segue to our sponsor. Are you tired of news that merely presents facts? Are you feeling ungrounded by the superficiality of mainstream media? Then you need grounding news. Unlike those flimsy fact checkers, we dive deep into the very meaning, importance, and sheer possibility of ground for today's headlines. Forget truth or falsehood. Our rigorous approach will guide you through the transcendental illusion of empirical events, revealing the constitutive finitude of every breaking story. Why just know what happened when you can embark on a dialectical engagement with repetition of its underlying conditions of possibility? Join the intellectual elite who understand that the news isn't about answers, but about the question itself, a question so profound you will finally be too existentially complex to argue with strangers on the internet. Use code ONEOFUS for 10% off your daily dose of unadulterated ontological confusion. Grounding news, because who needs facts when you can have grounding? We're doing the thing. All of us are always doing the thing. That's the point Jameson is making, that we need to understand how we function within capitalism to even begin to critique it.
Now, the idea here is that we live in a culture where consumption is the only thing that matters, and nothing feels more meaningful than consuming entertaining content. But when we get sucked into these types of content, it's sort of like our humanity gets sucked out of us. And we lose that special part of us that makes us more than just a bunch of nodes in a network of entertainment and consumption. And Foster Wallace connected all this with the cultural trend of postmodernism. But he wanted a form of sincerity, of meaningfulness in art and culture. For him, this meant that rather than art and culture being detached and ironic, he wanted art that tried to communicate something authentic. Things that aimed at a shared human experience.
Beyond ground news, that you brought up David Foster Wallace elated me. Your treatment of David Foster Wallace as a champion of new sincerity, standing against postmodernism on the edge of the cliff, reveals this pastiche of postmodernism at play again with the same depthlessness it requires. Wallace never escaped postmodernism. He was it. He's a man who could write incredibly beautiful, empathetic prose about human connection and sadness or terror, depression, simultaneously treating actual humans in his life like objects that exist purely for gratification. He could write infinite jest, also while telling Franzen that his life's purpose was, quote, to put his penis in as many vaginas as possible. It's not a contradiction to be resolved. It's a contradiction that exists because it is postmodernism in a pure form. It is the thing. We do the thing. You want Wallace to represent some authentic human voice that's breaking through postmodern irony? I don't understand how. Wallace threw furniture at Mary Cart. He bought a gun to murder her husband He tried to push her out of a moving car. This is not a separate thing from his literary project. This is the phenomenon. The ability to produce deeply felt literary sincerity. Treating people as disposable objects is the postmodern condition. Wallace famously would call his female fans audience pussy while writing about his desperate need for human connection. It's not hypocrisy. That is the structural schizophrenia of late capitalism made flesh. And you somehow think Wallace's call for art that communicates important and urgent human experiences represents a critique of postmodernism? Misses the point. That misses the entire point of the book. That authentic human experience is an aesthetic choice, another style that you can adopt or discard as you go. Wallace's new sincerity, or whatever the fuck we want to call it, doesn't escape postmodern commodification. You just are able to then coordinate yourself against it how you want, like you did with Infinite Jest.
Now, novelist David Foster Wallace wrote a really long novel that no one who has had sex has ever read.
And all of this is pastiche, not critique. Worse is actually how you use
that history is what hurts.
History is what hurts. The way you talk about it. It's an extraordinary misunderstanding, again, of Jameson's theoretical framework across his entire set of works. This quote, not from postmodernism, but instead from the political unconscious, has nothing to do with forgetting or remembering historical facts, as you seem to put forward.
So think about it this way, like if you don't understand history, if you do not have a connection to that which came before you, you can't understand how you got where you are. So when he talks about a cultural dominant, he's basically saying we need a framework by which we can understand where we are and how we got there. We need a framework by which we can use history to make sense of the present.
It is about history as what Jameson, following Althusser and Spinoza, call an absent cause, something that you can only apprehend or comprehend through the effects of it. I say that because that's the sentence right before your quote. Literally right before your quote. No, the paragraph's brilliant. See, Jameson is making the argument that this factual record of history, the representational elements that are malleable to human will, that certain ones can be put in line in very specific ways to tell us a story, that's outdated. It's an outmoded understanding of history, primarily used for power and control. That stuff allows the pastiche to exist disconnected, with no desire, passions, or libidinal drive. It's just the reference alone. It's a never-ending Family Guy episode, right? It's like, this is just like that time Peter misunderstood Frederick Jameson. There's no joke there. It's just a fucking referent. It's empty. Pastiche. He's saying that history is not that. See, history is force. Force is the experience of necessity. Necessity is a complicated concept. I'm not going to disagree with that. It's this idea that things that occur do so because of unavoidable deep-seated rules and forces that determine their course. The experience of necessity is that. We don't know what did it. We don't understand what caused it. We can't really name them. But certainly necessity is real. They're the things that all this happened because of. He cites Althusser through Spinoza specifically because in both of these guys, but definitely Spinoza, there's no like invisible hand of God or maker that's making this stuff happen. There's no prime mover of any sort. Instead, for all these guys, it's the structure of things, the relationality of the position of things within the social sphere in the world and how they interact. That is what produces social phenomena. Capitalism, for example, isn't a thing, but a superstructure. There's not like a capitalist who's kicking families out into the streets, destroying jobs, driving our anxieties, or fucking with the price of eggs. There's no Illuminati doing that. There's not 5 Jews in a cave somewhere controlling the economy, planning things out. There is, however, an absent cause. It's a pervasive interaction of the structure. So when you say
that history is what hurts, it's what refuses desire, it sets limits to individual and collective praxis.
It's a really literal quote, and I don't know how you miss it. History is what hurts. History fucks with us. History is what causes us pain. The passions of the moment, the drives, the desires, the will of the moment is thwarted, even repelled, because the passions cannot interact with simple reference. The past is facts, stone dead, corpses of life that have nothing in them. It is just the bare facts. It's not something the passions can interact with. When history returns, it hurts. It fucks with us. The fact we can't forget as we need to in like the Nietzschean sense means we can't just deal with things emergently. The necessity of driving us to find the cause is there. We must find the cause. We do this as parents. I have kids. If you do too, it helps. If a young child pushes a vase off a table and it shatters on the ground, you'll see a parent, no doubt, demand to know why they did it. They might yell at them a little bit. Why would you do such a thing? And the child will hesitate. They might say, I don't know at first. The parent may demand another answer because they want one, but there isn't. Maybe the kid will lie and say one, knowing the parent won't let up without knowing why. The history of things, man, that shit's fucking brutally repressive. When Jameson says that history refuses desire and sets limits to individual as well as collective praxis, he's not lamenting a disconnection from the past.
When we're not connected to history, we just feel whatever we feel in that moment. We only understand the moment relative to the moment itself.
Wow. No, he's describing how material necessity operates through structural constraints we don't consciously choose. History is not a set of facts we can study. That's not how history works. Ask people who study history. It's the very ground of necessity that shapes what's possible in any given moment instead. You go on to quote Jameson so out of context.
So Jameson writes, if we do not achieve some general sense of a cultural dominant, then we fall back into a view of present history as sheer heterogeneity, random difference, a coexistence of a host of distinct forces whose effectivity is undecidable.
And you present this with the following.
If you don't understand history, if you do not have a connection to that which came before you, you can't understand how you got where you are.
It's the opposite. Like, it's literally the opposite. Jameson at no point asks us to know what came before in that way. You go on to say his framework demands historicity. It does, but it doesn't how you're talking about it. Jameson spends an insane number of works rebuilding what history itself means in the materialist Marxist dialectical sense. I mean, it's through him I came to start saying that history is about form, not content. Because that's his thing. He fucking said that. Content is irrelevant here. Traditional understanding of history is pointless and even repressive. Instead, look at the forms, the structures, the logic of functions, and the forces at play, not reading books to learn about the order of events. I mean, Jameson wrote a lot. You've already used things outside of the work you're apparently quoting, and I don't know if you actually cited that, but if you go on, you could read late Marxism. In late Marxism, like capitalism, get it? He squarely rallies against the idea of there being linear history at all. That causative history that is linear is a product of a historian working, a historian, rather than space in history. Developmental logic is the term he uses for it, the way historians find a billion facts, yet somehow come back with a coherent narrative that doesn't have any contradictions within it. It's weird how they always seem to find a narrative thread that's unbroken, right? Yeah, it's a little weird. But problem, that's his critique. The very act of interpreting itself is actually historically produced. Instead, being aware that history is not a thing we can comprehend except for its effects. like we talked about before with Spinoza and them, that absent cause, we can only experience its effects. We are the effect. We are the bastard children of history. We must realize the lineage we are taught is the fiction that enforces the effect in our actions. So when you say,
always historicize,
I would beg you to read the rest of that paragraph. I mean, it's the first two words of the political unconscious. That paragraph itself goes on to very explicitly say there are two ways to historicize. The first would be content, how cultural, artistic content emerges from historical conditions, how themes reflect these conditions, and even what role things play within a historical context. The second is the interpretive framework. Here, it's about understanding how we even approach cultural objects at all, the concepts, codes, categories we use, the stuff that conditions the history of a thing or a people. And in that paragraph, he says explicitly, I mean the second. I mean, again, we're not even moving past the first paragraph of the preface of a book, and he writes how we cannot encounter history directly. Books always come to us already read through whatever tradition formed them, whatever popular understanding already exists, and even the frameworks we may have been taught. Always historicize is historicizing the act of historicization itself. In late Marxism, this is an explicit thing he talks about through his reading of Adorno's self-reflexive method. Adorno, as he goes about his shit, didn't just analyze cultural objects historically. He analyzed how his own analytical categories were historically produced. That's what Jameson hooks on to. This is why Jameson can simultaneously insist that everything must be understood historically, but critique linear developmental narratives at once. He basically is saying an anti-historicization version of historicization. It's confusing, it's tough, I know, but you don't have to make a video if you don't understand a thing. Just don't. It doesn't have to exist. What he advocates for is a dialectical historicity that thinks contradiction without synthesis. And allowing that. That's the dialectical historicity. The apparent contradiction dissolves when we see that always historicize is actually the weapon against historicism, not its expression. He is demonstrating how our very categories of understanding are themselves a product of historical understanding.
If you don't understand history, if you do not have a connection to that which came before you, you can't understand how you got where you are.
And this is, I think, why I had to make this video. What you're turning Jameson's sophisticated hermeneutic method into self-help bromide. Read some books. You'll understand yourself. This reduction of structural analysis to individual lifestyle choice is
often the people that are using postmodernism as some scary thing are doing postmodern stuff themselves. They are the ones who are embodying, facilitating, and perpetuating the exploitative logic of late capitalism.
Again, an Andy Kaufman level perfect example of postmodern logic, the very thing Jameson's method is designed to reveal and critique. And it did. We found it. You know, someday, I dream that a time will come where people will finally have a grasp on what critical theorists mean when they talk about schizophrenia. God, that'd be nice. One might be able to grasp the process as the focus rather than the clinical entity. That's someday. That's not today.
And I mentioned before that he talks about a certain type of schizophrenia that we get. Now, he doesn't mean a literal schizophrenia, but he thinks we end up in a schizophrenic position when we lose that connection to history.
No. This isn't about individuals feeling psychologically disconnected from history. It's about the structural fragmentation of experience qua experience under late-stage capitalism. When Jameson adopts their concept of schizophrenia, he's not talking about psychological states, but about how capitalism's deterritorializing logic fragments traditional structures of meaning. The schizophrenic subject isn't someone who forgot to read history books or is manic depressive. It's the form subjectivity takes when capitalism dissolves all the stable points of reference, all the depth, all the stuff that he's been talking about. And capitalism has done that. We are not being made postmodern, according to Jameson. You use language a lot in there for people who are watching your video and talk about how they might fight it like a cold or stop being tricked.
Now, another thing that happens under postmodern culture for Jameson is we have the split between history and nostalgia. Now, history, of course, is what actually happened. It's sets of historical conditions that lead to where we are right now. It's understanding the steps that got us here.
No. I would bet that Jameson would probably not be heard often saying, yes, history that actually happened.
Nostalgia is an imagined picture of a past that maybe didn't happen anyways.
You know, someday, a time will come which will not entail me returning to my days, running back and forth at the LDAC and under the shadow of a man who, sadly, I will have to name. But that day is not today. When talking about nostalgia, Jameson uses George Lucas's early film American Graffiti as a perfect example of the historically odd thing that is happening that is so damaging. If you haven't seen it, it's a story about mating rituals amongst teenagers in 50s and 60s.
The mating rituals of the 50s, the uniquely American mating rituals of meeting the opposite sex in cars.
Now, the film is fun. It's fine. I'm not here to talk about its quality, but it is a picture of this unique type of nostalgia. It's all the hallmarks and surface level things of the 50s. Kids racing cars, guys going after girls, awkward, family-friendly fucking humor. And the reason Jameson chooses it is actually not any of that, but this thing it does at the end. See, it's a super common trope now. It's almost a joke done in cartoons. But back then, I think maybe it was intended to make a point. As it fades to credits, it lets you know what happened to all the main characters by showing their pictures in the sky. People we grew to know, to care about, I guess. A couple of them are dead. A couple others are boring, I guess. But the film doesn't present these things as part of like a chain of events. It's disconnected. The film actually doesn't even touch the structural realities that created the deaths that would come. The desires of the characters for love, freedom, excitement, patriotism, militarism, a comfortable future. No, all of their silliness is allowed to exist unproblematically within the film, but then hits us with the factual hurting of history. Disconnected still, that's why it's a perfect example. The ending pain is unrelated to anything in the film, but we feel it. Well, my parents probably did, as did anyone who probably lost family in Vietnam. But we're talking about absent causes and a historicity that represses.
Think about the way that advertising and marketing sell us a vision of the past. They give us something to connect to that serves some purpose that sort of makes the past what we wanted it to be. And while history can help us understand the present and maybe understand how to change the present.
No. See, you're making the same mistake again. Nostalgia doesn't make the past what we want it to be. That's not what nostalgia does. Nostalgia specifically flattens history and does so disjointedly. Advertising, American Graffiti, these things don't give us what we want. They don't trick us. They are representations of representations. To steal from Baudrillard, people don't go see American Graffiti to be convinced it was real. They go see it to be convinced the world they return to is real. Get it? The dominant cultural hegemony, that's postmodernism, as defined in the book. The audience is already there when they see the ads or a film or watch videos. These don't add to a person's post-modernity level building up in them and they're at like level 17 or over 9,000. They are the way we engage socially. We're there. American Graffiti fits this because it shows no superstructures socially. There's no commentary. It's pure pastiche of those factual things of history, factual things. But at the end, Necessity's there, again, driving us. Necessity, 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 the invisible absent cause.
Nostalgia makes us sort of passive. It gives us a vision of history that never actually happened, that often serves a commercial purpose. And when we don't have a sense of history, we can't unify the past, present, and future of our experience.
See, it's the pure facts of the thing that you keep coming back to. I got to tell you, is the problem here. Nostalgia's almost the fetishizing of facts, the way that people think American is a series of presidential people that they can recite, or rules of the land, or a pledge, or that the labor movement was something that like 6 guys did, I guess. These are representations of things, stories, narratives, great man of history bullshit. These are not the forces underneath them. An easy example would be if I were to talk about like the BLM protests that happened when they did, right? The marches, riots, all of that. I could spend my time talking about the numbers of people, the facts around it. And then I could just say nothing happened, right? And people would understand that we have a demand for immediate, quantifiable, consumable legislative outcomes. But that belies a profound inability to perceive or even discuss the diffuse molecular changes that operate beneath glittering, depthless surfaces of this hyper-reality of capitalism. The protests, for all their visceral presence, were immediately absorbed into a spectacle, their raw energy processed into pastiche, images, slogans, hashtags. And those things become mistaken for the event itself, for the desire itself, for the passions themselves. And when the immediate simulacrum of the streets dissipated from the screens, the reality of that movement, its profound shifts in public consciousness, corporate branding, cultural discourse, the very effective register of race in America today, all of that suddenly becomes invisible to those who require all those facts, the significance, to be reducible to a marketable product, a linear, prepackaged historical arc so we can place ourselves. To claim nothing happened is to deny the very possibility of radical change in an era where all political action threatens to become just another fragment that's aestheticized inside of this bullshit and divorced from its historical ground, where its historical profound impact is obscured by the very conditions of its mediated existence. You can almost hear the soft click of the remote, the digital echo of a historical moment reduced to a thumbnail, posted on Twitter, swallowed whole by an insatiable maw of perpetually refreshed feeds, dismissing a profound multifaceted reverberation of people and a movement as having done nothing. And that's not just a misreading of history. It's a quintessential symptom of our present postmodern condition, a chilling testament to the waning of affect and the insidious flattening of historical depth so acutely diagnosed by Frederick Jameson. Anyway, here you are doing that.
At least where I live, there were some protests and marches where there was like 100,000 people in the street, and it felt like we were doing something. We're going to change society, and we're standing up against, capitalism and patriarchy and white supremacy. And then we kind of just started doing other stuff. We got back to normal. We kind of just, nothing really happened. It all stayed the same.
And no, I don't really give a shit if you were trying to be humorous. If you weren't trying to be humorous, gross. If you were, gross. Fuck, come on, dude.
Which means that maybe we're not skeptical enough about ways we're being manipulated. Maybe it means we can't see the historical connection to where we are and where we came from. Maybe we can't use historical examples as a way to understand where we are in the present.
This is that severe misunderstanding of the critique of ideology. You're not being manipulated. Postmodern existence is not some trick played on a subject who could know better if only they were smart. There's no trick. There's no self-help way to fix you. You're in it. This is it. We're here, you're here, I'm here, let's do it.
Now guys, this is really important. Marx did not think that capitalism was bad.
You want a great example of what we're talking about? There's this thing you find in intellectual circles about kind of any subject. There's a common sense or dogmatic grasp of a thing that circulates. And people who think that they're very clever enjoy poking at the thing and inverting it. This happens a lot. Take the American Civil War. And Initially apprehended as a grand moral struggle against slavery, it's a simple force that drove inexorably towards emancipation. That's kind of what we teach our kids, right? Elementary school and shit. But yet, as one progresses through secondary education and maybe even early university, this singular cause is dissolved into a complex, sprawling network of contingent factors. Intricate financial ties of international debt, the shifting nature of trade, competing land ownership claims, political exigencies of a nascent republic. History in this phase becomes a diaspora of disparate causes, each meticulously cataloged but ultimately resisting a singular grounding force. This fragmented accounting, while seemingly more nuanced, simultaneously achieves a break from history, transforming historical events into a mere catalog of fascinating but ultimately unconnected facts, a refusal to totalize that parallels the dismissal of contemporary social movements. This is precisely the postmodern predicament Jameson outlines, a loss of ability to cognitively map the intricate systemic connections that underpin social reality. When France, for instance, needed to manage a colonial rebellion in Haiti and the logistics of a vast overseas territory, the Louisiana Purchase was framed as a simple financial need by them, a pragmatic diplomatic maneuver that they made. A truly Marxist understanding, though, reveals that these events are never isolated, or complex network effects even. They're structurally determined manifestations of deeper underlying forces. The purchase, far from being a singular act, was driven by the inherent logic of capitalist expansion, the imperial competition for resources and markets. Crucially, the relentless drive for new frontiers of exploitation that would irrevocably entrench and expand the institution of slavery in the burgeoning American empire. An institutional force that, in its structural immensity, was the proper ground of the Civil War, not merely one cause among many. And that's the funny thing. After you get through all that academia, into all of the nuance and the complex works of the area, you learn the Civil War, it was about slavery. You just have a more nuanced understanding of all the forces at play. That middle step's a fucking bitch. The failure to pull together the forces that are introduced due to this structural systems at play, that's where this video is. That's the array of riddles and facts laid out. Don't you understand them? It's a language of the sued. Nobody wants to be a sued. But being able to one-up people online gives us a charge a little bit. Little riddles that we can seem cool, answers that flip the script on someone, make us feel good. So let's pretend we're going through that same process with Marx. What would you tell a kid? Well, Karl Marx came out and he showed us how capitalism is bad and hurts people. Then the middle step.
We sometimes want to read Marxism as a moral philosophy or as a way for us to just say like, yeah, capitalism is bad. Capitalism is immoral. It can be good or bad, and we think it's bad. But Marx was a dialectical thinker, which means that he was interested in thinking about how capitalism was good and bad at the same time.
Okay. The dialectic is not saying things are complicated. It's not about these elements of good and bad coexisting. It's about forces inherent to the system, opposing within the system, oppositional contradictions that are interacting, conflicting, and driving change. Capitalism is not just good and bad at once. It's good. The productive capacity, the technological innovation is inextricably linked to and even generates the bad of exploitation, alienation, boom-bust cycles, immiseration of the working class. The good sets the stage for the bad creates conditions for systemic crisis and transformation. This is not what the dialectic is. The very deployment of moralizing or ethical categories like good and bad here reveals how thoroughly we are all trapped within this flattened ideological framework that dialectical analysis is even trying to overcome. That's the point. These terms don't just inadequately describe capitalist contradictions. They actively mystify them by translating structural antagonisms into a semi-ethical judgment that can be resolved through better choices possibly, or reformed policies. When we say capitalism is both good and bad, We're performing exactly the false synthesis that every Marxist thinker is warning against, smoothing over irreducible contradictions by suggesting they can be balanced or managed, rather than understanding the motor of historical change itself. This is what Jameson's about. This is why Jameson's two paths of historicization become so crucial. We must historicize not only cultural objects we study, but the evaluative categories through which we approach them. Recognizing terms like good or bad are themselves sedimented products of bourgeois ideology, and these things prevent us from grasping the historical specificity of the forces we try to analyze. The point here is not to transcend moral judgment through relativism, but to understand how moral categories function ideologically within us, within the social space, to naturalize what are actually historical and therefore changing social relations. Things change. Systems shift. Capitalism as a system isn't even really the thing that has stayed the same since Marx talked about it, and much of what he says has actually been outmoded by the very systems that he helped push and understand. Capitalism is a massive series of interrelated pressures that are constantly pushing and pulling things within it. The layout of these things may change, but what's important to look at is the elements and their relationships and how they create strain and contradictions in the forces of history from here that move things and produce the culture we're in. You can see that it establishes an accumulation of misery corresponding with accumulation of capital. Accumulation of wealth at one pole is therefore at the same time accumulation of misery, agony, toil, slavery, ignorance, brutality, mental degradation, and the opposite pole, the side of the class that produces its own product in the form of capital. Marx thought capitalism was bad. It's harmful. But time for a digression here. I'm going to step aside. I had to go back and add in. I recorded this, and then I went back because there's a thing that's kind of bothering me. You use pop culture references to make a point. And I realized it's another example of pastiche. See, you reference Future's song At the Same Damn Time, as though it were at all dialectical, or your version of it, I guess, the idea of a contradiction of a thing being good and bad at the same damn time. Have you listened to the song? You use a clip. He's bragging about wearing Gucci and Bally at the same damn time. That's not a his life is not a series of contradictions. There's nothing in the song that is. Those are luxury brands, both of them. Fucking two bad bitches at the same damn time. That's not one bad bitch is a contradiction to one good bitch. He's got two women he fucks because he's so cool. It's a song about how he's got money and is just a huge piece of shit. That's all it is. Just because the chorus has the same words.
Often the people that are using postmodernism as some scary thing are doing postmodern stuff themselves.
It's literally surface level pastiche. Not only is there no depth in this analysis, but you use reference that are themselves empty and devoid of irony or critique in themselves. Fuck.
Postmodernism is not Marxist. There's no such thing as postmodern neo-Marxism. It doesn't make any sense. There's no magical connection by which postmodernism becomes Marxism or Marxism creates postmodernism. It's not how it works.
Okay. I have a very, very different take here than apparently everyone else. Don't let bad faith assholes with no concept of your field and no interest in improving it set the categories or language you use when dealing with the world. Okay? Jameson is a newer type of Marxist, and he wrote Postmodernism. David Harvey, he has done new interesting things with Marxism and wrote The Condition of Postmodernity. Alex Kalinikos critiques postmodernism using Marxist categories. The relationship between Western Marxism and postmodern theory is complex and multifaceted. To say the intersection of them doesn't exist during a video about Jameson himself is wild and next level incoherent. I mean, Slavoj Žižek exists, and saying he has output that is using a postmodern critique to offer a new version of Marxism is basically the jam. Sure, Peterson saying postmodern neo-Marxism is an incoherent boogeyman how he uses it. This does not mean there is not a complex relationship between Marxist theory and postmodern culture analysis. By playing Peterson's game of rigid categorization, you miss the actual theoretical richness of how Marxist thinkers are engaging with postmodern conditions itself. Do not let bad faith actors who are stupid define the terms of discussion. Letting Jordan Peterson and his idiots set the stage for what these things mean is akin to walking around making sure you always add the word globe to earth just to make sure people get where you're at.
Because if postmodernism involves a disconnect from history, Marxism is a way to directly connect our present experience to historical analysis. There's no magical connection by which postmodernism becomes Marxism or Marxism creates postmodernism. It's not how it works.
Because if postmodernism involves a disconnect from history, Marxism is a way to directly connect our present experience to historical analysis. There's no magical connection by which postmodernism becomes Marxism or Marxism creates postmodernism. It's not how it works.
God damn, there's so much here.
Now, one of Jameson's solutions to the problem of postmodernism, or at least one method for how we can approach leftist cultural production, is something he calls cognitive mapping. And it basically means that we need a type of cartography or sort of map that shows us where and how we exist in the world. It shows us the sort of connections that are at play that postmodernism might be hiding from us.
Jameson does not call this a solution. It's a modality of existence within the cultural hegemon. It will not defeat capitalism. Cognitive mapping is about developing representational forms adequate to the global complexity that late capitalism offers us. It's not so individuals can find themselves or navigate things better, but actually so collective political action can be possible again. It's not about you figuring out where you are. It's about the working class, the proletariat, the repressed, the pushed down, the beaten, the undertrodden, the worst, the people who are fucked, understanding their position in the global system. It's understanding where we are all at, not me, myself. And postmodernism is not hiding this from us. It's not hiding things. I don't know how you make a move of saying postmodernism is a logic of capital, yet sometimes also say it's actively hiding things, like it's an invisible hand or singular force or element doing things. That's modernist shit. The reduction of this collective political project to this individual navigation just exemplifies the postmodern logic the video claims itself to critique. And I'm, again, wondering if you're doing a Kaufman thing. Because at the base, it doesn't even matter. This isn't hypocrisy. I'm not claiming hypocrisy. I'm not angry. I'm not even talking down. The entire point of this is to help people understand what postmodernity is for Jameson. It's all of this. My video, your video, the shitty rap song, whatever you watched before clicking this, whatever YouTube is about to send you to, all of this is the logic of the modern condition, the postmodernity of late capitalism. And I think it gets to me more because 2 weeks ago, you made a video outlining fairly well about how we see the world shaped not individually but socially, that the repression from the political and social spheres makes us. You referenced Malibu. You had one of my favorite quotes from her where she says,
paraphrasing Marx, Malibu writes that humans make their own brain, but they do not know that they make it.
You know that's a clever turn of phrase, right? It's not pastiche. Men make their own history, but they do not make it as they please. They do not make it under self-selected circumstances, but under circumstances existing already, given and transmitted from the past. The tradition of all dead generations weighs like a nightmare on the brains of the living. Brains of the living. This is a Malibu thing. And it's the reason I recommend Ontology of the Accident to anyone. It's a phenomenal read, really. But this thing was scratching my brain since I saw that, and I couldn't quite figure out what was bothering me. But here, you made the same movement. It becomes clear. See, in all of Jameson's work, and Malibu's too, there's not a stable thing, a subject, right? When we talk about Malibu's brain, when we talk about Jameson's subject, there isn't a way we should be, a version of us that's messed up or something that's broken and can be fixed and returned to. It's a really common mistake to make. I tend to blame like popular sci-fi and the romantic notion of the individual. It's the metaverse idea, right? You could say it's the romanticized regret of not taking the other path in a fork in the road, feeling that drives us in resentment to produce a belief that the road was less traveled, to make us feel like we chose the right path so we don't have to beat ourselves up over another possibility. Hey, I've felt sad. This will get me to being who I was meant to be. But you weren't meant to be anything but what you are. The brain we have under capitalism is the brain. The cultural world we have is the cultural world. We weren't corrupted at some point. Who we are is who we are. We were not meant to be something else under some other form. We make the world what it is, and in turn it makes us what we are. Whether you're a middle-aged white guy doing philosophy videos who fails to name a good rap song as an example, or a middle-aged white guy who makes philosophy videos who pathetically helps reclaim credibility amongst the kids by flexing knowledge on rap videos. We are in that system. Forces at work make us do this, and in turn, we are the forces in turn making it all. There isn't you. Not really. Just as for Malibu, there's no Malibu, or there is for her no brain. For Jameson, there's no subject. These are things produced socially in a complex interaction of forces that come together, but they're still not things. This is the interaction of structures and the stresses of them. Structures that inherently have parts interacting and producing and pushing and doing things. I sit here. I watch this video. The structures that built me go through an infinitude of emotions. Excitement to jump on the inconsistency so I can play into drama content that riles up an audience and gets people to comment and interact so I can make a few extra bucks. Sadness at my predilection to do just that. Empathy, as I'm not exactly a brilliant philosopher myself. I fucked up a lot in the past. I will fuck up a lot in the future. I am every version of me that I have talked about here. I am all of these. They are made by these forces. I'm here. I'm turning into each one and continually to move on, and that's the way it works. The traditions of the dead me's that have come before, they weigh on my brain like a nightmare, and it changes. It changes forms. It switches. The continuity of it all forms history, and it teaches me what I should be doing, the model of me. I oscillate between that model of me and the experience I'm living. And in here, I weave the story of myself with inferences, disjunctions, syllogisms, paralogisms. The postmodern condition, the logic of late-stage capitalism, that's what's at work here. It's the logic of culture. It's the logic of how we make sense of it all, even ourselves. So yeah, everyone is wrong about postmodernism. You too, by the way, but not for the reasons you outlined. For the reasons that you made the video, for actually the way the video works itself. It's because nothing feels right. Nothing seems to work. Nothing seems to happen. And because we're driven to find a solution, but there isn't one. And Jameson gives no cure, no solve. But he does give us a logic. It's the name of the fucking book, after all. It's not a set of riddles. It's not things to memorize or facts we need to go find. It's systems at play. And it is a wild fucking ride. All right, so I'm going to outline the 4 logics here. Before I do, I want to state up front the mistake that someone is going to make, or already did, probably. Nothing I'm going to say is about something that was taken from you by capitalism or something you can prevent or fight against. That's not the thing. You're free to go disagree with Jameson. Many do. This video ain't fucking for you then. But what we are here to talk through is what he's proposing, and for him, you're already here. You're fucked. But how? These are not things that we fight against, but to be aware of. So you can use this knowledge to properly understand the forces at play collectively, and maybe something else can happen. The first logic to learn is that for Jameson, there's not a deeper meaning in things. We may speak that one might get at a painting and learn about it. Your experience of it crystallizes around this discovered essence of the thing, right? But there's no depth. It's not how it works. Not for anything. The experience of the things is made in the engagement of the surface of itself. You experience effective modulations of moving through the arrangement of pieces. Las Meninas. I have found it to be a stunning piece, and it is. But it's not that each time as I've learned about it, I've learned more and more, and I've gotten to the depth of the truth of the painting, and because of that, I've gotten more at the core and crystallized. Instead, the arrangement of the painting and myself in all of my understanding and the facts I've contained interacts differently each time. There's a more complex, nuanced understanding, but that is the difference. It isn't getting at the true thing, not the singular. It's getting at more and more and more interactions of more pieces. First logic. Waning of affect is an interesting one. With this, since there's no depth, right, to the art or the object, well, there's not to you either. There's no depth. Again, depthlessness is across the board. So you are also an arrangement of affect, of pieces. Experience is feeling. We feel things, right? These things pass through us and go on. It's because there's not a subject that's like holding on to things or keeping them. It's not really how it sets up. When I see Las Meninas and I'm going through it and I feel emotions, it's not really that I feel emotions, but instead the space that I am within modulates, shifts, changes based on that complexity. Temporal flatness is something I can actually describe easily. You ever felt like you're stuck in a loop? Like everyone I know, the past somehow feels forever ago, yet also momentarily just happened. Tomorrow is also immediately coming and terrifying, but also will never arrive. The perpetual present, this isn't unique to Jameson, but man, did he write some good stuff about this. Again, the same depthlessness as the first two. This is again a logical effect of this type of historicity. It's not that we have nostalgia for better times when we watch American Graffiti or 90s public access or home movies from our childhood. Time doesn't have depth. There's no true time. So when we watch American Graffiti, we're not actually experiencing the time. What we're doing is experiencing those things as aesthetic materials, not the depth. Again, the collision with the multiplicity of them, the surface level things of the 50s or 90s, 80s, whatever the fuck, it doesn't matter. That's all fine. It's all that. That's that logic. And with these three, because we're going to be coming back to Marxism now, we get to reproductive technology because as these logics are working, they don't stop simply in the economic or social, but the political, the technical, the working, everything, productivity of society, they're baked in. This depthlessness is baked in. Capitalism removes depth from everything, right? So under late capitalism, commodity logic, it's not really just imposing itself on pre-existing cultural forms. It becomes the generative principle of cultural production itself. This is a big step of moving beyond sort of Marxist, like classical analysis. You might say a neo-Marxist perspective of postmodernism, where use value, it's going to maintain some residual autonomy, right? In his old setup, that's not what we're doing. No. Jameson instead wants us to talk about simulacra. You might know a few other people who talk about this. This is cultural products that are born directly of commodity logic. There isn't an authentic original to betray. There's no true thing. There's no depth. That concept communicates kind of all the feelings I've been talking about. These four logics come together to create a cultural dominant that Jameson is building and goes on to continue to build. These logics give us a view of the world as the forces produce it, not as some transcendent good-bad idea of things. Take YouTube. YouTube's a fun one. You can go with the baby-brained old Marxist critique to say that, oh, look at the creators who were on it from the start. We've got Angry Video Game Nerd. We got, I don't fucking know, Schmoyo, Leafy, more recently H3. What about Jack's Films? I don't fucking care. I don't, it's not my world, but you can go back and you can historicize it in that way. Talk about the order of people and creators who were working authentically to build real things. And then over time, YouTube came to co-opt that when they sold out. YouTube exploits an authentic creativity and production process that people have. Yeah, this is a shit critique. No one cares. This has nothing to do with postmodernism, and it also doesn't really have to do with Marxism, because, again, what you're doing is you're creating a causative order by writing out all of these different little facts and the fun little riddle, and there's no depth to the critique at all. So there's no depth, because there's no depth. We need to historicize differently. Jameson style. Go through the four logics. You get to realize The very condition for that which counts as creativity itself on YouTube is conditioned by forces that create the possibility space for creativity on YouTube. The algorithm, for example, the way people share things, the format, the way people write thumbnails. Every step generates these conditions. Human watchers internalize that logic of what is shown to them in the same way traditional TV watchers accept the logic of what a network is going to show next after Friends on Thursday night. That process ensures that what is seen as authentic expression is indistinguishable from platform-level optimization in any way. That's the critique. That's depthlessness. Jameson has laid out postmodernism as a critique. It's not a criticism. It's a systemic look at the production of reality today, a logic of late-stage capitalism. And yes, the word is shitty, I get it, and it's overused, but it's a goddamn good word for him. Jameson actually knew this, and he said, "I occasionally get just as tired of the slogan postmodern as anyone else, but when I'm tempted to regret my complicity with it, to deplore its misuses and notoriety, to conclude with some reluctance it raises more problems than it solves, I find myself pausing to wonder whether any other concept can dramatize the issues in quite so effective and economical a fashion." It's a postmodern take on the word postmodern if I've ever heard it. Well, this week I'm going to be hosting a live stream or two to go over a few of Jameson's texts on this. Valences of the dialectic is a favorite. We're probably going to hit into that too. I hope you'll join me. We can move further down my reading list. I want to give a big thank you to my sponsors, which means my patrons. It's the way it works. If you want to support me and this work, I would love that. It would be wonderful. Head over to patreon.com/DGQC. Sign up for a monthly cup of coffee. It makes all the difference in the world. And as always, I'll see you soon enough.